In today's episode, a conservationist and owner of 2 rescued lionesses took his wife out for some routine playtime with a pair of 5-year-old lions. As the man wrestled more and more rough with the lions, his wife watched in horror as the lions launched a fatal attack. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the terrifying lion attack on West Mathewson. Welcome to Final Affliction. In 2015, Safari Lodge owner and conservationist West Mathewson made a decision that would change his life forever. He rescued 2 one-week-old lion cubs from a nearby farm that bred lions until they were big enough and old enough to be released into the bush to be hunted by trophy hunters. West thought the sport was cruel and couldn't stand the thought of these 2 female cubs being reared for slaughter. They were rare white lionesses, and West saw a business opportunity in the making. He bought the pair of them and took them back to his Lion Tree Top Lodge in Hedensprut, just outside the infamous Kruger National Park in the Limpopo province of South Africa. He was as devoted to them as he had been to his own children, and named them Demi and Tanner. Day and night, he bottle-fed them until they were weaned onto a diet consisting mostly of meat. He built in a daily routine which included playing with the cubs and taking them on walks 2 or 3 times a day. He was their father figure, and they became like family to him. Soon, he was introducing his guests to the cute lionesses, and they were certainly a huge visitor attraction. On his website, West posted many photos of the guests playing with the young lions and enjoying the close-up experience, even with children walking side by side with them. But they were growing up. As the months ticked by, they grew bigger and required more exercise and space to roam. They were becoming powerful, and West could see that their play fighting was beginning to resemble that of adult lions. But West remained as devoted to them as he had ever been. By 3 years old, the lionesses were considered fully grown. West developed the nickname Uncle West, as he was seen as a caring, fatherly figure to the 2 white lionesses. He wrapped his arms around their enormous heads, giving them tight hugs, and they would sometimes include him in their play fighting, which often became too rough for West to join in. He had to be careful. In his late 60s, West certainly wasn't getting any younger, and the lionesses were only getting stronger and bolder. Whilst Demi and Tanner hadn't shown any aggression towards West, his family, or any of his visitors, there were warning signs that they still had strong wild instincts. It was only natural for them to display their natural behavior. Although they had been hand-reared by West and had only ever known their life on his property, they still had the innate ability to hunt. In 2017, when the pair were 2 years old, they escaped from West's property. On the other side of the fence, they had spotted Kepekulu Justice and a colleague who were out on the veld collecting wood. When one of the lionesses ran towards Justice, she leapt onto him and pinned him to the ground, whilst the other female stood watching. The man yelled for help, and his friend came to his rescue, picking up stones and pelting them at the lion. She ran off, and Justice's friend helped him to his feet and carried him to a phone box to call for an ambulance. He was bloodied all over and suffered from lacerations to his legs, torso, stomach, and chest. The 2 men made it to the hospital, but Justice, who was a diabetic, died a few days later. It was a tragic incident, and doctors couldn't say whether his death was definitely due to the attack or his underlying health condition. In response to the awful incident, West said that he was sure that the lioness just wanted to play, and if she had wanted to kill him, then he would have been dead in 5 seconds. Whether that statement was true or not, it still shows the raw power that both Demi and Tanner possessed. They were, at the end of the day, wild animals, despite being tamed. West was probably right. A single bite to the man's neck would have sealed his fate in a matter of seconds, but it served as a stark warning to the dangers of keeping such animals in your care. West had a great responsibility to the general public, but there was no way of completely taming a lion. They were too powerful to be held back. and West wanted them to have the freedom to roam on his land. But fast forward to August 2020, when the two lionesses were 5 years old and West was 69, and history was about to repeat itself. West called for the lions as he took his daily stroll through his land, and Demi and Tanner came trotting over. West's wife, Gil, followed behind him in their car. The sun was shining and there was a gentle breeze rattling through the thick, scruffy brush. The sounds of the African bush were alive as the three of them walked along in silence, as they did every day. It was an incredible sight for Gil, watching her husband walking through the African bush, flanked by two enormous white lionesses. It was a dream come true for West. He was always a keen conservationist, and owning a property in the greater Kruger area, where he was able to interact with the animals, was everything he had ever wished for. But something was about to go horribly wrong. During the walk, the two lionesses began play fighting. It was something they regularly did. They were constantly testing each other's strength and fighting skills. It was natural behavior, but they were getting more aggressive with one another. West stood still whilst the two females grappled with one another. He could hear their guttural growling as they pinned each other to the ground and gnawed on each other's fur. He could tell they weren't holding back as much as they used to do. This was definitely a play fight West didn't want to get involved with. But it turned out the 69-year-old didn't have a choice. Like two overly excited children going a step too far, Demi and Tanner were getting more and more rowdy. Suddenly, one of the females leapt off the other one and launched itself at West. He was immediately flattened by her. The air was knocked from his lungs as he was thrown to the floor. He hadn't had time to protect himself, as the action was totally unexpected. Clouds of dust kicked up as the lioness began mauling West. He shouted at her to stop, but she continued biting him. Gil could see her husband was in trouble. She had seen him wrestle with the lions many times before, but this was different. This was much more frenzied and powerful. She honked the car horn and shouted out of the window. She rammed the car forwards to scare the lions away. Mercifully, the lioness snapped out of the zone she was in and jumped up and off West. Gil ran to his side. He was bleeding profusely, and she tried to stem the bleeding from his neck. As the African soil turned red all around West, Gil called the emergency services. Paramedics rushed to the scene, but it was too late. West had died in Gil's arms. The attack had happened so quickly that there wasn't anything Gil could have done. One powerful bite to West's neck, and an artery was severed. There was no coming back from that, and in an instant, Uncle West was gone. The two lionesses he had nursed from 1 week old had turned on him, and his legacy came to a tragic end. Whilst the family tried to come to terms with the devastating loss of West, who was a father to 4 sons and grandfather to 6 grandchildren, they were determined that the animals would not be harmed. It was not what West would have wanted, and his daughter-in-law, Terry Mathewson, was certain that the lionesses were only engaging in rough play. They didn't know their own strength, and one of them had inadvertently killed their owner and carer. It was unlikely to have been a deliberate attack, but it had ended in disaster. Demi and Tanner were darted and were removed from the property. Having mourned the loss of West, it was sad for the family to see the lions go. They had been such a big part of West's life over the past 5 years that their loss was like losing him all over again. They were taken to an endangered species center, and the family stated that they would be released into the best environment available to them. While saying goodbye to a loved one is never easy, the family found comfort and peace in knowing that West died doing what he loved, living his dream, being in nature and with his lions that were so close to his heart. But as long as people continue to be around dangerous apex predators like these two lions, West Mathewson won't be the last one to meet their terrifying final affliction.